Hey guys, we are back with lesson 2-2. This lesson is titled Exponents. Hopefully I already gave you a piece of paper. It's not going to be peach like mine, but the paper for notes for exponents. If I didn't, just write this paper along with me and we'll fill it in, but I hopefully already gave you this paper to fill in on and glued it in your math journal notes. So we're going to first write a couple of rules to follow. You can write it on the glued in paper like this, or again, if you don't have it, just write it on the lined paper. That is totally fine. Make sure and number your page, put it in your table of contents, and then we'll go ahead and get started with our rules. This is the most writing. The inside of the paper actually is going to be our next slide, and it's just filling in the blanks. So this one is a lot of writing, but then that's pretty much it. So our first rule with exponents is the base 1 rule. That means if our base number, which is this one over here, it's the big number like a normal number, if that base is 1, then it doesn't even matter what number is up here, the answer is always going to be 1. So if my base is 1, my answer is 1, no matter what the tiny exponent number is. Then our next one down here is the base 0 rule. The base 0 rule says that if our base, which is our big normal number again right here, if our big normal 0 is there, then 0 times anything, we know that, is going to be 0. So even if it's a 3, if it's a 10, if it's a 256, 0 raised to any power is going to always be 0. Okay, then moving down here, our first power rule. First power says the first power of any number equals that number itself. So for this example, they use the number 13 here. Well, 13 to the first power is still going to be 13. So it's itself is the answer. If you take it to the first power, the answer is the same number itself. Couple more. We have the 0 power rule. That means that whatever number is here, it doesn't matter what number is here. If you see the little tiny 0 exponent right there, then the answer is always going to be 1. That one's the weirdest one to me because I'm like, what? But anything raised to the 0 power with a 0 exponent, the answer is always going to be 1. Okay, then second power and third power. Second power, that just means we always call that squared. So over here, if I were to write 3 to the second power, we also call that 3 squared. So if you hear me say that, that just means that my power up here is a 2. Same thing for third power. That just means that I'm taking a number. So let's say I took the number 8 and I took it with a 3 up there to the third power. I would really call that 8 cubed instead of 8 to the third power. So sometimes I will say that. And if I say if I say cubed, that means to the third power. And if I say squared, that means to the second power. So make sure you have all those written down and then flip to the inside of that notes page. And we're going to fill in some vocabulary and things on the inside of that notes page. So pause if you need to. And if you're ready to move on, I'm going to go to page 2, which is on the inside of that page. Okay, so now on this page, I have a lot of this filled out already. We're just going to go in and fill in a few things. The first thing that you need to fill in is our vocabulary. We already used that word base. Base is like a normal regular number. Okay, it's just the whole 4. But then the exponent is this, it's like a tiny little number above it. It's always a little bit smaller. That's my exponent. So this one would be called 4 to the 7th power. 4 to the 7th power. That's my exponent, is 7. How this would be written out is I have to write this many of this number. So right here, I wrote out 7 4s. 4 times 4 times 4 times 4 times 4 times 4 times 4. That's what 4 to the 7th power would look like if we expanded it out. So these are the same thing. 4 to the 7th power is the same thing as 7 4s written out. So now under here, we're going to look at some examples. So we have the first example here. On the left side, it says 4 to the 2nd, but remember we also call that 4 squared. We expand it out. Remember that 2 tells me how many 4s there are. So there's a 2, a little 2, so that means I have 2 4s. So I have to write it out as 4 times 4. 4 times 4, my final answer over there would be 16. The most common mistake that people make is they think that you are just multiplying. So they might take 4 squared, I'll show you up here, they might take 4 squared and they would say, okay, 4 times 2. But that's not what an exponent does. This number tells me how many 4s I have to write out. So 2 4s, so 4 times 4, not 4 times 2, 4 times 4. Now, I've filled in these other ones. I'm not going to go through all of them with you because you'll see that you can just kind of fill in the answer as you go. But we have 5 to the 6th power, 7 to the 4th power, and 9 to the 3rd, or 9 cubed. It's the same thing. So remember that that little number tells you how many of the big numbers you multiply. So in 9 cubed, I have to do 9 3 times. 9 times 9 times 9 gives me 729. Now I know those are really big numbers. I just want you to get used to writing it out in these expanded forms. Okay, now the opposite of that is, instead of expanding it, it's when they give us this already expanded number and we have to count how many there are and write that as the exponent. So we know that our base number, the number that is written over and over again, is a 3. So I write my 3 and then I count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There are 7 of them, which means that is my exponent. So this one is 3 to the 7th. Now, if you think you can do that with these next 3, go ahead and do them. I know I have the answers on here for you, but go ahead and fill those out on your paper. So 7 is my main number on this one, so I write my 7, and there are 1, 2, 3 of them. So it's cubed. And then so on and so forth down the line. Now the last thing here is to write each power as a product. So this one wants our answer because a product is an answer in a multiplication problem. So we have to first expand it like we just did up above, but then we have to answer it. So for this one, 2 to the 4th, that means there are going to be 4 2s. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Now we multiply them. 2 times 2 gives me 4, times 2 gives me 8, times 2 gives me 16, and that's how we get our final product. The same thing over here for this one, 8 squared, that 2 tells me that I have 2 8s. So 8 times 8 gives me 64. Then 3 cubed, that tells me there are 3 3s. 3 times 3 is 9, times 3 is 27. So that's how we got our final answer. And then 10 squared, easy peasy, just 2 10s. So 10 times 10 gives me 100. And at the bottom, I just wrote one little note. There's nothing for you to fill in, but it says important. 2 to the third power does not mean 2 times 3. That means I have to write 2, oops, it's not letting me write. That means I have to write it out with 3 2's. 2 times 2 times 2, and my final answer is 8. I am not just doing 2 times 3. Don't do it. Don't do it. Okay, that is it for notes for exponents. You are ready to roll. Come with these in class, and you will be ready. Thanks, guys. Have a good night.